All right, I think we're recording. Hey everyone, how are we doing today? Welcome to our lecture on polarization or party sorting, aka the lecture that is going to help you dissect the 5 chapters that I assigned to you from Unstable Majorities, which is going to be the book that you're going to base your paper assignment on. Okay, so the game plan is we're going to look at the 40-year puzzle, aka one of the things that or this is the idea that kind of motivated the book and the questions that are asked in the book. Then we're going to talk about what unstable majorities are. Then we'll talk about the difference between polarization and party sorting, which is one of the key ideas that you need to understand in order to do this paper. Then we'll talk about the consequences of sorting, and then we'll talk about how to research for your paper, specifically how to provide or what is the necessary evidence that you're going to need to do this paper well and provide a sufficient justification for your argument. Okay, so the paradox, the 40-year puzzle, the reason why, Mr. Dr. Morris Fiorina wrote this book. He looks at the fact that despite that we have had 40 years of closely divided elections and frequent changes in party control, the public itself has not become more polarized. We have this constant narrative that, the American public is deeply polarized. Fiorina is saying, no, they're actually not. But we have something weird happening. This is the puzzle. Poli-sci people love puzzles. The puzzle is that for the past 40 years, our elections have been decided on a razor's edge and we've had a lot of turnover. So what do we mean by 40 years of closely divided elections? Well, since the 1970s, US politics has been characterized by a pattern of unstable majorities, meaning neither party consistently holds long-term control of the federal government. A stable majority is when the presidency and both houses of the legislature are held by one party. So this unstable majorities, the title of the book is about the fact that recently we have not seen that. And I have lots of fun information about it on the next slide. So here, oh wow, okay. Also, I apologize for the weirdness of my images. I was taking PDFs of the book itself, so some of these are a little crooked. Okay, so in the past, what used to happen is we would have a situation where one party dominates across most of the policymaking parts of the government, meaning one party controls the presidency, they control and they control both chambers of Congress, the Senate and the House. So you can see this over here. On this side, we start in 1896. We have a period of time where Republicans dominated. So this is the era of Republican majorities. They control the presidency, the House, and the Senate. We have a brief period of the Democrats coming into control and then the Republicans again. And this is, almost 40 years of pretty consistent control. And more importantly, the same party controls the executive and both houses in the legislature. Then we have a period of Democratic majorities where this is World War II, Great Depression era, where the Democrats dominate. They dominate for, almost like 20, 25 years. The Democrats dominate. Then this is in the middle, this is the era where we have something called different institutional majorities. So there's still some consistency, but we're getting a bit of a breakdown of the pure Democratic dominance or the pure Republican dominance. So in 1954, you can see Republican president, but Democratic House and Senate, and then Democratic kind of dominance, and it kind of flip-flops back and forth. But what the true motivator of this book is this third image that I have over here. This is the unstable majorities, where you see in 1992, so this is Bill Clinton, is president and has a Democratic House and a Democratic Senate. The next election, 2 years later, the House and the Senate both flip to Republican. So instead of one party having a stable majority across all of the important policymaking parts of the government, we see instability. The Democrats control the presidency while Republicans control the legislature, including the House and the Senate. We see this again happening in 2000. So the little star here means that George W. Bush lost the popular vote but won the presidency. And then we have, Republicans controlling the House and a tie in the Senate, but then somewhat consistent Republicans, and then the flip. We got double Democrats here and here. And then the Obama era, which we have, Democratic control across the board, and then almost an immediate flip to having Republican control in the House and the Senate. This is that unstable majority that Morris Fiorina Fiorina. What is my problem with this name? This is what he is trying to explain. Okay, so unstable majorities. Why has this happened? That is the motivating puzzle of the book. Like, why? Why do we have this switch? We had something consistent for so long, and now it's not so consistent. Why is that the case? Well, he's arguing that so far the assessments of why this is happening are wrong. Political analysts often say that this was caused because the public is deeply polarized. The public is deeply divided, and they're oriented towards the extremes. But Fiorina is saying, no, this is not the case. He suggests that the problem actually lies more so with the elite. So the elite level, these are politicians, the media, activists. These are the ones where polarization is happening. It's not actually happening in the public. And this is where we see this idea of party sorting. So Fiorina argues that party sorting is where political elites, aka politicians, activists, and the media, I'm going to use the term political elites, and sometimes I accidentally say party elites. That's what this means. It means politicians, activists, and media. People whose entire lives are politics. They eat, sleep, and breathe this stuff. So party sorting is when these political elites align more strictly with their ideological positions, even though most citizens remain ideologically in the middle. So it is the elites of the party, the people who, spend their lives in politics. Those are the individuals who are becoming more ideologically consistent, despite the fact that the public remains ideologically ambiguous, let's say, somewhere more in the middle. And don't worry, I'll explain this stuff a little bit more. So what is party sorting across the board? Party sorting is when the elites in the party become more ideologically consistent. In this realm, those elites in the party, the politicians, the activists, and the media, we don't see liberal Republicans anymore, and we don't see conservative Democrats. All the conservatives are Republican, all the liberals are Democrat. We create this divide. I know that seems weird because we're like, of course, the liberals are Democrats and the conservatives are Republican. That seems obvious. But we're talking about just the party elites. You guys all have a friend, or at some point in time, you probably heard someone say, well, I'm fiscally conservative, but socially liberal. This is like kind of everywhere. And that's the case for the public. They're mixed. They're not pure conservative or pure liberal. In party sorting, this is when the political elites become pure liberal or pure conservative. And I'll talk about what this looks like in terms of each of the different parties. But moral of the story is, when party sorting occurs, this is when parties become more ideologically distinct. Even though the public is still mixed, the parties become more unified around one ideological space, and they stand for certain things. And again, this is what I'm going to talk about in the future slides. Sorting happens even when the public is becoming more extreme. So the political elite become very consistent and very, ideologically cohesive. And this mixture goes away with these elites. But the public is still mixed. They're a little conservative and a little liberal all over the place. But the parties can sort and the elites can sort even while the public still remains mixed in their views. So in this case, the middle of the ideological spectrum still exists. It still exists in the public, but the parties have shifted away from the middle. They're the ones who are shifting towards these ideological silos on either side. And I have a great example. I think it's a great example. So, oh dear, my head is covering the... Okay, well, I'll move my head momentarily. Okay, so I have a great example. This is not in your book. This is me coming up with an example from, the life I live and the things I see. So Joe Manchin and Liz Cheney. These are two great examples of Fiorina's argument. For the case of Joe Manchin, West Virginia senator, was the senator of West Virginia for a long time. He was a member of the Democratic Party, but his ideology, his belief system was not pure Democrat. He was seen as a moderate. He was a conservative Democrat. The result of this is that he would often break from his party. He would often vote with the Republicans instead of the Democrats. And this was pretty common because he was trying to represent his people of West Virginia, and they were not ideologically consistent. They did not always agree with the liberals. Thus, he did not always agree with the liberals. Ultimately, he retired recently and was replaced in the West Virginia Senate, or sorry, he was replaced as the West Virginia senator by Jim Justice. But the existence of Joe Manchin and his exit is a great example where, he is reflecting the fact that the public in West Virginia is moderate and they don't necessarily always agree with the issue areas of the Democrats or, the Republicans. They're a mixture. And the kind of big idea of this and what Joe Manchin represents is that the public isn't necessarily perfectly sorted into these ideological silos, but Joe Manchin's exit shows that the parties might be, because Joe Manchin got a lot of flack for every single time he voted against the Democrats and with the Republicans. And this shows kind of like those ideological divides really being created during this time period. And now I'm going to move my head. So Liz Cheney is another great example. So Liz Cheney is a Republican, or I guess was a Republican. Anyways, she wasn't even necessarily a moderate. Liz Cheney was seen as a very traditional conservative Republican, just basic vanilla Republican. That was Liz Cheney. But ultimately, she was kind of kicked out of the Republican Party. She was primaried and lost her seat because she opposed Trump. So she voted against Donald Trump in the during the impeachment process of when January 6th happened. And ultimately, the Republican Party expelled her for going against the core Republican views. She violated those things, and the entire Republican Party ejected her for it. So again, she represents how distinct and cohesive these different ideologies are, and how you can't necessarily conflict with them in our current day and age. You have to be in the ideological groupings of the Democrats or the Republicans. You have to be all conservative and supportive of conservatism, or all liberal and supportive of liberalism. Okay, big idea. This is a great example of the fact that the parties are so sorted that they were willing to punish internal dissent. Despite the fact that Liz Cheney held a lot of conservative values, she was seriously punished for this vote. Okay, so next, if I'm saying, all right, the parties are sorting into these ideological silos, all right, they have these consistent beliefs. And this is not in your book, I want to talk about what are the consistent beliefs, what are liberal beliefs, what is a liberal ideology, and what is a conservative ideology. So for a liberal ideology, and this is the Democrats, they have certain core beliefs. The government should play an active role in promoting equality and addressing social problems. This is kind of one of those driving forces of the Democratic Party. They think that the government has certain responsibilities to its people, and they should, the government should be promoting inequality and deal with any social problems that we have. That is their job. This also comes with a, support for individual rights. I have examples of this on the next slide, so just bear with me. They support individual rights, civil liberties, and social justice. So for individual rights, okay, I guess I'm going to do it now. Think like abortion. For civil liberties, think freedom of protest, freedom of speech. And for social justice, think about the Black Lives Matter movement. If you were a Democrat, you supported this movement. You supported, dealing with all the problems in the criminal justice system. And if you were a Democrat, you supported that. There is no violating that line. There were no Democrats who were like, I don't really know about the Black Lives Matter movement. I don't support that. It wasn't really, this is the party sorting. It wasn't really allowed, and it wasn't really tolerated in the Democratic Party. And then finally, so Democrats are often called, not often, but some Democrats are called progressives. And this final point is why. So the liberal ideology favors change and reform when existing institutions or practices are seen as unjust or outdated. AKA, Democrats largely argue for change. If something's not working, let's get rid of it, overhaul it, and do something new. And this is really important as a core belief, because if you think about healthcare, if you think about, our economic system, if you think about education, they are saying, listen, let's do something new. If this isn't working, they're super down to overhaul. And this is important once I get to the conservative ideology. who is less interested in doing like a full-on overhaul of current institutions. Anyways, I have a quote from Franklin Delano Roosevelt from FDR, who is like, one of the symbolic liberal Democrats. Quote is, "True individual freedom cannot exist without economic security and independence." This is very much embodying that first point where the government should play an active role in promoting equality. So this is FDR saying is the government's job to, create equality. We should, redistribute wealth to some degree. Okay, anyways, I'm gonna stop babbling about this. So let's put this in actual, like, real terms. Oh, my head's covering something again. I'm sorry. Liberal ideology issues, Democrats, aka also known as progressives. So, the economy, they largely support government regulation, high taxes on the wealthy, and social welfare programs. You can see how these stances align with those core beliefs about it's the government's job to promote equality. The government should make sure, like, if we have like high income inequality, Democrats would say it's the government's fault and it's their job to fix it. That's why they advocate for things like welfare programs. So this is health insurance, Medicaid, for those who are, have lower incomes, free access to education, and also food assistance, things like SNAP benefits, food stamps. Like, this is the Democratic kind of, like, this is their ideology playing out in policy. For social issues, this is the individual rights, civil liberties, and social justice kind of argument. So they support abortion rights. They support, the rights of the LGBTQ community, and they also support racial and gender equality. These are all, oriented towards, they're all oriented towards, like, inclusiveness and individual rights and civil liberties for every individual, regardless of their creed, race, sex, religion, etc. And I bring this one up because I think it might be a good topic for you all to do with your paper. Immigration reform. So you can see the Democratic policy platform and like those core beliefs really playing out with immigration reform. So, and this is like straight out of the talking points of the Democratic Party. They say we need a pathway to citizenship. Their views on, the immigration problem that's happening with the United States is not, let's keep everyone out. Their views are illegal immigration is not good. We should make it easier and create a pathway for citizenship. We should change our system so it's easier to enter into the United States in a legal way. So this is, again, you could see the progressiveness where they're like, listen, our system isn't working. Let's overhaul it. Let's do a new one. Okay, I'm going too far off. Criminal justice favors rehabilitation, reducing mass incarceration, and reforming policing practices. So you could see this with the Black Lives Matter movement. Democrats were like, yes, let's, more body cams. We need more, accountability for police officers, in terms of favoring rehabilitation. Oh no, I can do this. In terms of favoring rehabilitation, their views are like, crimes should be punished, but also like we need to give individuals who have committed crimes like a pathway to not make those mistakes in the future. So this is like advocating for education in prison and, getting job assistance for felons once they get out of prison, these kinds of things. Okay, I'm still talking too much. The environment, strongly support the environment protection and climate change policy. This is the government getting involved, being like, hey, businesses, the things that you're doing might be hurting individuals. So the government is going to regulate you. The government is going to guarantee equality. The government is going to interfere with business practices. All right, sorry. Some of these things are hard to talk about because you really see the difference once you compare it to the other side. So, conservative ideology, aka this is Republicans, / a more traditionalist view on things. So, conservative ideology, core beliefs, limited government, especially in the economy. This is the idea that, they argue for limited government because they argue that the government is inefficient. The government is not a good solution to things. When the government gets involved, it creates more problems than it solved. then it solves. So they argue like the markets are the best thing to determine how, the economy should work. When the government gets involved, it messes with that. So they argue limited role of government, particularly in the economy. They also have an emphasis on individual responsibility, tradition, and free markets. So free markets, that is limited government, especially in the economy. Tradition, they are deeply rooted in, American history and also conservatism, keeping things the same, not changing things, drastically, and kind of like preserving a certain, type of America. And then individual responsibility, this is like the quintessential pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. This is the emphasis of the conservative ideology, is that how you become rich and profitable is not by the government intervening. It's not by the government providing things for you. You do it through hard work and individual effort. If you work hard, you will succeed. Individual responsibility is very important in conservative ideology. Okay, that is all to say, and you can see how this is a pretty hard contrast to liberal ideology, is that conservatives and, the modern day Republican Party, they're very cautious about rapid social change. They prefer stability and order and continuity. So they're very suspect of change, and we'll see this when I go on the next slide. Anyways, my Ronald Reagan quote, who's, kind of a quintessential conservative thought person, is the most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. Because conservatives think the government is not good at helping. They think that, the government makes the problem worse. Okay, so policy areas. Conservative ideology, conservatism / traditionalist. Sorry about my head and these problems. So the economy, again, the government should not be messing around the economy. Thus, they prefer lower taxes. This also has individual responsibility. You know what is best to do with your money. Why would the government take it? These two things are kind of interconnected. Fewer regulations, free market capitalism. This is the markets do things better, not the government. And thus, they're very skeptical of any large government programs. So they tend to be opposed to Medicaid, food stamps, unemployment insurance, because those are large government programs. And the government does things badly, so don't get involved. Social issues, again, with this, we want to think of those traditionalist values. So they tend to oppose abortion and also support traditional family values. If we want to think about traditional family values, think about same-sex marriage. Conservative ideology, or those who prescribe to conservative ideology, tended to be against same-sex marriage because they wanted to preserve the traditional family structure, and same-sex marriage was a change from that. So they're like, whoa, we're conserving the kind of values and the families we have always had. They're also more cautious about immigration, and the reason why they're more cautious about immigration is because they're worried about this rapid culture change. If we have a large influx of people from other countries coming into the United States, then they argue that the United States would not be the same. It would be different. It would have different values, possibly different languages, possibly different, holidays that we celebrate. So they want to conserve the current America and prevent, rapid shifts. You could see the division here. Criminal justice, emphasis on law and order, strong policing, tough on crime policies. So this is, if you commit a crime, you pay for it. The thought process behind it is, if you have, committed a crime, you will be punished, and the hope is that will deter people from committing crimes. They'll be like, oh, that punishment seems a little bad, so I'm not going to do that thing. That's the idea. My dog's falling over. Okay. The environment, mixed views. So like Nixon passed the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act, but kind of today's conservative ideology, we have a lot of support for energy independence, but they're often very skeptical of any regulations about the climate that might harm businesses. Because this is, again, the government should stay out of the economy. Regulations are messing around the economy. Businesses will regulate themselves. This is the idea. Okay, and this one's just for fun. I had a fun time with quotes. So they even back in the day when we did not have the party sorting situation, the different ideologies still, would snipe at each other a little bit. So so this is from FDR. A conservative is a man with two perfectly good legs who, however, has never learned how to walk forward. This is FDR saying, listen, stop conserving and let's progress. Let's be progressive. Let's move forward. And then Ronald Reagan, in kind of contrast to this, said, the trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so. This is him saying, you guys think that your awesome plans for the future are going to be effective, and you're so confident that this change is going to be great, but I don't think so. So you can see kind of these ideologies embedded in here. And now, back to unstable majorities. Oh, whoops. There we go. Okay, so what's new? Like, these ideologies have been around for a long time. They have shaped and they've shifted, but they've remained largely consistent. What's actually new is it's not that the ideologies themselves are getting more extreme. It's those who identify with the Democrat or Republican parties have very little variation. So I boiled it down to like, here's 3 points about Republicans and 3 points about Democrats, but like, these things exist on a spectrum. There are some times where you're like, yeah, the government should get involved in the economy. And there are other times where, yes, it's good to conserve. Like, these things exist on a spectrum. It's not black and white like that. But party sorting is when the political elite treat it as black and white, where you have to be 100% for these things on all things. And, same thing with the other party. So in this case, when party sorting happens, the ideologies become incredibly consistent and deviation from those is not tolerated. So this is Joe Manchin and Liz Cheney. They deviated from these consistent ideologies, and this was not something that became politically viable. In the 1970s, conservative Democrats existed. Liberal Republicans existed. This is, I'm fiscally conservative and socially liberal. Like, those were everywhere. But now, you cannot find that in political elites. Today, most conservatives in the political elite realm are Republicans. Most liberals are Democrats. Now, the thing is this is not what Fiorina thinks is happening in the public. He thinks that there are plenty of conservative Democrats and liberal Republicans, but not in the political elite. In the political elite, you have this consistent ideology. And this is not what we expected to happen. Oh man, my head's covering this thing. It's before party sorting, the assumption was this median voter theorem. In the median voter theorem, it is assuming that voters, so normal people like you and me, are normally distributed, all right? Our views are not particular, like some people have extreme views, all right? So I'll go to the chart. Some people are on the fringes, all right? They're way over here. They're super, super liberal. Some people are super, super conservative. But they're not that many people. They're on the fringes. The majority of people are in the middle. Some are, a little liberal, a little conservative, or a mixture of the two of them. They're moderates. They're centrists. They're not on the extremes. So this means that how should the parties behave? If this is how voters are distributed, what should the parties be doing? Well, they should be centrist. In order to win elections, they need to get as many votes as they possibly can. So their party views can't be way over here on the fringes, because if they were, you'd only get a small segment of the votes because you'd be seen as too extreme. So what we've seen in the past is, party platforms would be, more towards the middle because you got to capture these guys in the center. And the idea was like, even if parties, preferred to stand for other things, even if they had, certain goals and ideas, they would still move to the center so they could capture all those centrist voters. I don't know. They're always driven. Oh, right. So they're always driven to capture majorities, get the most people they possibly can. But what Fiorina is arguing is that we're not seeing that anymore. We're not seeing the parties be particularly centrist. We're seeing them move more towards the extremes. So in this, image, so we have the Biden/Harris ticket, which is still somewhat centrist. Biden is from, he's from the former generations. So, he might still be living by the old rules versus Trump. is, new to the political scene. And the party that kind of was created around Trump orients itself more towards the extremes. And the Democrats are also moving this way over time. So the parties are getting further away from each other. They're getting more and more deeply embedded in their own ideological silos. That is party sorting. They're not orienting themselves around the average voter. They're orienting themselves around their own political ideology. Okay, so this is where we get to polarization. Polarization is also new. This is also a change. We do see more extremes and a lack in the middle, but not in the public, just in the political elites. So remember, politicians, media, activists, those are the ones that are getting more extreme. Those are the individuals that Fiore argues are more radical than the average person. So this is a quote from Fiorina. The public is not deeply polarized. Our political elites are. This elite polarization and party sorting, not mass extremism, explains our unstable political climate. So Fiorina is arguing that average, everyday, normal people are not getting more extreme. They are where they've always been for the past many, many years. It is the political elites that are orienting themselves more around these extremes. So, what is polarization? What is true polarization? Polarization means that people's political attitudes are becoming more extremes. Liberals being more liberal, conservatives being even more conservative. And in this case, we should see no moderates, no one in the middle anymore. We should see those going away as people move further and further to the extremes of the spectrum. So if we have mass polarization, this means the whole public is moving to the ideological extremes. It means that we have less common ground between voters. Voters will fight about. There's no compromise because you're moving further and further apart in what you think is the right way to approach any issue. And this ultimately would create more hostility between the different parties. It creates something called effective polarization, where if you move further and further apart, compromise is less likely, disagreements are even more intense. That means that politics gets more emotional. The other guy's win feels like directly your loss. If an opposition party gets a policy passed, it's a knife in the heart. It hurts because, well, you're so far apart that is in direct contradiction to your beliefs. So we see more emotions in politics. And you might be saying, well, I do see this. I see this with people around me, but we need to look at overall trends. What does it look like for everyone? Is everyone who identifies with the Republican Party deeply opposed to everything the Democrats do and vice versa? Fiorina is saying no, they're actually more in the center. And okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. So let's look at this. So party sorting and polarization is what Fiorina is arguing. And I'm just going to take my head completely out of here for a minute. Okay, so this is, well, I guess not completely out of here. I'll go over here for a minute. Okay, so this is an image from the book. So it's comparing the 87th Congress, so in the 60s, to the 111th Congress in the 2009-2011. And you can see, based upon voting records and this categorization, in the 60s, the parties overlap more. They were closer together. It looks more like that median voter theorem that we talked about. The parties are, oriented around each other. They're coming to the middle to grab where the average, political or the average person is. And then in the 111th Congress, we see them splitting. There's more division. The members of Congress are more hanging out in their ideological silos. They have sorted based upon party and what they believe in. And their voting records reflect that. Oh, no. Okay. I'm coming down. I'm going to chill down here now. Okay. Party sorting. Oh, right. So this is an example of these things happening in different issue areas. So you can see each of these charts shows an issue area. This one shows party sorting for same-sex marriage. So you can see in 2001, the parties are, they're far apart, but they're not as far apart as they are in 2016. And again, this is about party or the political elites. So these are politicians, media, and activists. Over here, we have abortion. Like back in the 80s, we had kind of a consensus on abortion. There are certain times where abortion was seen by the majority as acceptable, and certain times when abortion was seen as unacceptable by the majority, regardless of party. The two parties were pretty close together. But you can see a significant divergence all the way into this says 2016. We got much more separation between the two parties. Oh, right. And, okay, so these are ones where Democrats have shifted more epically. In terms of gun ownership, Republicans have shifted more epically. So you can see in 1993, Republicans and Democrats, far apart, but not incredibly so. Much more far apart today. In 2016, the division on this issue between the two parties is much more extreme. And this is the party sorting. And this is kind of what one of the things that I'm asking you guys to do for this paper is like pick an issue area and assess, are the parties sorted? Is there deep division on this issue? And then you compare it to what's happening in the public. Oh, I don't even know if there's any place. Well, I guess I'll just kind of chill a little bit over here. Okay, so that's the political elite again. What's happening with the public, with everybody else? Fiorina is showing that, well, they haven't polarized. So in this chart over here, there's multiple issue areas, services/spending, insurance, aid to minorities, jobs, and military spending. Way over here would be extreme left. Way over here would be extreme right. And the middle is, I don't know, aka I don't have strong feelings about it. I'm in the middle. I don't feel one way very strongly or the other. And that's where most people are. Most people, so 30 to 35% of people are chilling in the middle. And then this is multiple different measures of levels of moderation. And you can see over time, so 1972 to 2016, like there has not been a whole lot of change. These are 3 different ways to measure moderation, but most people are sticking in the middle. If the public was polarizing, then the percentage of moderates to say, then these things would be, deviating. They wouldn't be relatively consistent over time. So the argument here is the public has not become more extreme. Many moderates remain. We still have centrists in the public. It's the parties that have gotten more extreme. Okay, so what are the consequences of this? What does it mean when we have consequences, so what are the consequences of sorting and polarization in elites, aka media, politicians, and activists? One is it results in the puzzle that we've identified. It results in unstable majorities, aka this frequent party turnover where Democrats win, and then there's almost immediately a backlash with, a Republican surge and vice versa. Republicans win, Democrats surge. And this is because voters are not strongly partisan. They swing back and forth between parties in the national elections. And this is because no one is necessarily representing them. So they kind of like backlash again. Okay, I'm just going to go into the next point. So when one party wins, one issue is that parties misinterpret this win as saying, whoa, I'm a Republican and I just killed it. I swept the presidency. Like I won the presidency. Republicans won the House and they won the Senate. This must mean that everyone is 100% in on the conservative ideology. And then they overreach. They go too far with the conservative ideology and the public who is not in that silo reacts. And then they punish them being like, okay, you went too far. I'm electing Democrats. And the same thing. You saw this with, with the Obama presidency, like with the 2008 stimulus packages, all these kind of very Democratic-oriented problems. And then Obama was punished almost immediately in the midterms with Republican majorities in the House and the Senate. There is a backlash because these, parties overreach when they're in power. They think, oh, the majority agrees with me when the majority doesn't. The majority isn't that extreme in their views. They're in the center. And again, it's all Fiorina's argument. You are allowed to disagree with it if you want to. If the evidence suggests you should, let's say that. Okay, this produces that unstable majorities pattern that we've seen. Neither party is able to actually build a durable governing coalition, which results in some really unfortunate things. We talked about this before. It results in gridlock, not getting anything done. You have a Democratic president and a Republican Congress, nothing gets done, or vice versa. creates this governing whiplash where you have a whole bunch of stuff being done and then it's stopped. It's absolutely stopped because of, the next cycle punishing and putting the other party in power. And the thing that's worse about this is, I guess, my opinion, is that it results in very little long-term stability. We saw this in, the past few decades when Obama passed the ACA, the Affordable Care Act. Republicans were not interested in governing. All they wanted to do was overturn the policy that the Obama administration and his Democratic majority passed. And we saw this with the Biden administration after the first Trump administration. Like, it was all about, okay, let's undo what the last guy did. And this is like, it creates instability and creates, it's not an efficient way to run government. So you don't have long-term policy stability. You don't have a long-term vision. It's about combating against what the other guy did. Okay, I'm talking about this too much. Next problem: voter dissatisfaction, alienation, declining trust, or declining institutional trust. So the parties may be becoming ideologically more pure. It's fine. But the public isn't. So that means that if you have the only people you get to vote for are tried and true Democrats or tried and true Republicans, but they don't represent you. They're too liberal. They're too conservative. This means that, those independents, those moderates, the people that are clustered around the center, they feel politically homeless. They don't have anyone who represents them. Who do they vote for? And this is, that narrative that you've been hearing, voting for the lesser of two evils. That means that the candidates you have to choose from don't represent what the majority want or what the majority think. I meant to fix this. Oh well. So this is one of the things that contributes to, I guess I can fix it now. I think I can. So this is a problem that contributes to low voter turnout, which is problematic. If you feel, ideologically homeless, you don't have anyone who represents what you think, you don't vote. Because why? Why pick between the lesser of two evils? Just not participate. Because the system is messed up and rigged anyways. This is the cynicism. And it's not that is true, but this is what party sorting makes people feel. These are the consequences. I don't know. Oh, right. As the parties become more combative and more polarized, that means that it also makes us trust the institutions more. Makes us trust Congress, the presidency, the courts, and even elections. The core, the building blocks of democracy, we no longer see them as valid because all we can see is instead of Congress doing their job, they're fighting. Instead of the presidency, creating a policy vision, they're trying to get rid of what the last person did. And you saw this in 2020 when there was denial of the United States elections. There are consequences to the party sorting, and you can see this here. Fiorina's argument is that, in regards to all of this, is that it's not that Americans hate government. They're not just inherently distrustful. They don't, just hate the parties naturally, but they see dysfunction, and that's what they don't like. And it's the party sorting and the polarization of these political elites that are creating this dysfunctional government. So the results: disengaged citizens that are more hostile to the political system. And I'm just going to stop talking too much and end it there. And this is one that I'm sure you can truly see. One of the consequences that's absolutely endemic in our society is that with polarization and sorting of political elites, this means that extremist views and extremist narratives dominate the political discourse. The moderate majority is less engaged in primaries and activism. Thus, they're not voicing their views. They're not voicing their opinions, so they aren't heard. As a result, because the moderates and the centrists are staying quiet, this means that, who's the loudest? The more extremes. They're the ones who, their voices are amplified because those are the ones participating. Those are the ones sharing their views. And this kind of gets further embedded by the media because what's more interesting? Someone who is, saying an extremist thing or someone who's being middle ground, very compromised. It's the extremist thing. And this creates the false impression that the public is more polarized than it really is. It makes us think that the elites and their extremist views represent us all when the data shows, hopefully, Fiorina convinces you, the data shows that they're not necessarily. They might be on some issues, but not totally. So The result of this is political discourse becomes angrier, more performative, and less representative. Okay, now your paper. So, with all this being said, the reason why I broke it into this thing is that, one, your paper, like what I care about is making an argument. All right, I don't care what issue area you choose. Whatever you're interested in, I'm happy with. My only warning is don't choose something too big. Don't choose the Trump administration or the environment. Both those things are just too big. You need to be somewhat narrow so that you can do this in 3 to 4 pages. We're not writing a book, so pick a somewhat narrow issue area, and then make whatever argument you want. You can disagree with Fiorina, or you can agree with them. Like, it's your choice. I think it's perfectly valid to disagree, and obviously, I mean, you can agree as well. Both are fine. I'm not saying one is better than the other, but I'm just saying you can do both. But when you do one or the other, there's something critical to doing it well. You have to provide evidence. You can't say, I disagree with Fiorina because that's what I think. No, you need evidence. You need evidence to support your argument. And so with what we've done so far, there's 2 core pieces of evidence you're going to need. One, you're going to need public opinion on your issue area. All right, and this is easy to get. So Pew Research Center is a great resource, but honestly, just Google public opinion on blank. So I think I could do this. I Googled public opinion on bathroom bills. So this is legislation that either supports or opposes letting transgender individuals use the bathroom that coincides with their gender identity. And I just Googled that, and the first thing that pops up is Americans' complex views on gender identity and transgender issues. It's not perfect. It's not exactly, public opinion's view on bathroom bills, but you can draw some conclusions from this. You can draw some. They have all these charts and things. Like, this is the kind of stuff that I think is important. So you need something. If you think the public is polarized, fine. Show me something. Show me something that suggests that the public is polarized on these issues. If you don't, great. Show me something that the public is not polarized on the issue of your choice. Next, politicians, media, and or activist view. Oh, right. So if you need to bring in the political elite in this. So you need to give some evidence of what, the media or politicians or activists think. And you can do this in lots of different ways. You're probably not going to have politicians' opinion on, it's not going to be an epic survey like in, the public opinion case, but you can use news reports, politicians' comments, different headlines, etc. to illustrate that, the political elite are polarized or they're not polarized. Whatever. There are many ways that you could do this that would be good.